about a week to do this, and there was a lot of materials to review. So thank you for your time to do this. I think it would be just beneficial for people to skim through this when you're eating. And then there's also in here there's a letter from Commissioner Vickery that he had provided to me previously. And I just included this letter from him. It's actually front and back about a P&Z consultant and then some general thoughts about the regulations in the comp plan. And we did take these comments and also put them in with the survey. So I tried to find which bullet that responded to the question. And to the public, Christy is making copies of the survey right now. So she'll bring it in here soon. I apologize. We did not quite we just got all the survey results in today. So the survey though is, that one was yours. I'll let everyone just go through it in silence for a minute. Those who are on Teams, I'm going to be dropping this in the chat box in a second as well. Okay. That does break. We both put together the survey. We tried to make this as general as possible, but also getting into the details to help us at least start the conversation tonight. And I know too that there was quite a bit of information that was, oh wait, is this not me? It will not let me add it into the chat. So I can, but I probably can't do it this minute. who have joined on the Teams, if you're able to type in your email, I can email you the responses. Be emailing those in a minute. Is everyone done, or at least mostly through it? Okay, great. Let's continue. Thank you all for taking time to review that. Also, just thank you everyone for being here. I am just personally, like, I really appreciate this, and I know how busy all of you are, and the fact that you're doing this on a Thursday night for Sublette County to help us with this is great. And I think just to understand the importance of what we're doing, everyone, like, to get us all on the same page. I've been a little nervous for this meeting, so I don't know. I appreciate it. If I say something dumb, it's because I'm nervous. Sorry, but just to get going, though, I think just the importance of planning and zoning. This is not an easy task for communities. We are not the only community that is challenged with planning and zoning issues. This is all over the country with current issues. And I feel like in the news, my news feed now is constantly just planning and zoning issues around the country. And it is absolutely, like, it's crazy what some communities are dealing with. And just the more we can prepare for things and help plan for the future of Sublette County. We're fortunate to be where we're at, and the fact that we haven't even had some of these issues come to us yet, but it could possibly happen. I think the purpose tonight is just to bring everyone together to identify priorities, discuss some reoccurring issues and future challenges, and help establish a work plan and direction moving forward for planning and zoning and working with the commissioners. I haven't run a meeting like this before, so please, if people want to change something in the meeting, I am happy to, we can do that. But the goal of this meeting tonight is to be 2 hours long. Just try to keep it very high level and help give some direction. So
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure, are we recording? I wasn't sure. I didn't see the recorder on the
actually, I'm
channel.
very glad you just said that. I don't know if we're recording or not. Thank you. Well, I want to record can we record, or I'll record it. In here that it is 6:20 and the meeting started at 6 o'clock. We started the recording. So overall, finding a balance with private property rights, agricultural preservation, economy, opportunities, infrastructure, natural resources and wildlife, and overall character and future of Sublette County. These are all things that are identified in our comprehensive plan, and that was really holistically identified in the surveys too. And the comprehensive plan and the zoning and development regs, they are our primary tool for the county to use to guide these decisions. And the comp plan is really intended to establish the long range goals, the visions, and policy direction for the county. And it was originally developed in 2003 and it involved 43 people. And significant amount of time and effort went into this. And even with public surveys, from talking to a few people in the community, there were some large surveys that went out to make this document. The regulations, they are intended to implement that vision through standards, procedures, and development review processes. These were adopted in 1978 and they've been amended through the years, with the most recent being short-term rentals and tower regulations. And through these regulations, we have administrative permits. I'd say those are more of the black and white permits that come to our office and we review those development standards, we review our regulations and issue the permit. The larger applications though, these ones can be a lot more complex. And that's where more of the gray area occurs. And that's when planning and zoning and the county commissioners get involved. So really, no matter what, there's always going to be, I think, challenging applications. But if we have regulations in place and a good comprehensive plan, it can help guide some of those applications and just whatever people are wanting to do in the future of Sublette County, as far as, private landowners and even commissioners trying to help guide that. And I think growth and change is somewhat inevitable. The question is whether growth will be guided or unmanaged. We cannot predict the future, but we can do our best to plan for it and be proactive. I just think this is really interesting thinking about this for Sublette County. Our population density, just in general, is less than 2 people per square mile. And just when you think of that, it's our population's about 8,900 people according to the US Census for the estimated population for 2025. And approximately 3,500 of those people are in the municipalities. So just how rural some people where we live when it comes to infrastructure, how spread out the infrastructure is. So it's not necessarily, all consolidated in one place, where it is consolidated more in the municipalities. As we get more rural, this is where infrastructure can be more challenging. We do face similar issues as other counties. However, I do think that that we have, because of our unique characteristics, some of these applications haven't yet come to us. I met with the Wyoming Business Council with Commissioner Bernard a couple weeks ago, and we did have a conversation about possibilities of what does the state think when it comes to future economic development and possibly data centers. I feel like data centers, it is just something we see popping up all over the country. And the one piece of feedback from the state, from the Business Council, was because of our rural unique characteristics, our energy grid, and even the broadband infrastructure, we are not set up at this time to really have that carrying capacity for data centers. However, who knows what that could end up. We aren't the utility companies. We're not the ones driving that. It's the utility companies too. So where could we be in a couple years from now, and how can we plan for that? Um, sorry, I am rambling, but I feel like there has been a ton of work that's gone into this, into the comp plan and the regulations through the past few years, and trying to just get an understanding for planning and zoning and the commissioners to figure out how to do this together and figure out who are the best people to be involved. How do we do this in a productive way? Um, the tower regulations, I think this was a great task for planning and zoning. With being the new administrator, I felt like it was a good intro project for me to even realize the balance in our office and just the balance of working on regulations and trying to do the everyday permitting and customer service. I think just doing that customer service and working with the public every day that's just as important as working on these regulations. Um, and how do we all tackle this together? One thing that I wanted to share too was the Wyoming Business or the Mineral Royalty Grant. We have seeked a grant application for almost $150,000, which would be a match to the county of $150,000 to help support efforts towards updating the comprehensive plan and the regulations. And what we provided to them with the application was a very high level scope of work. There's still time to refine this scope of work and figure out what levels of detail we need to do with each of these different components of the project. When we met with the business council, something that was interesting during the last legislative session, they were given the direction to help support counties with coming up with economic development plans. And this would be through a grant application process where the plan may cost up to $100,000, but the counties that apply for it may need to contribute up to 25% of the project. This could be an opportunity just with the timing to help with the comp plan. I'm not saying this would be entirely the comprehensive plan, but it is a big component with future growth and development to keep in mind the economic development side. And we haven't received additional details at this time, but it sounds like that will be available in the beginning of, or the grant applications due the beginning of August. And they were open also to come to a county commissioner meeting to share more about that when there's more information. So, but I think overall tonight it's best, how can we utilize some of the information we have? How can we come up with with a with a work plan to move forward on this, and coordinating between planning and zoning and the commissioners, and just getting everyone's thoughts on this together in one night. So, and also I just wanted to announce, I feel like this should have happened earlier. Scott Davis is here. He is new in the planning and zoning office, and he's going to be starting in June. And do you want to say hi and say anything? Or okay, well, there's just this is just a huge topic, and I do think, how do we address all these different things? I have like all these different statistics, but I think we can maybe we review some of that down the road, about Sublette County. But it is just, we are in such a special place, and I think trying to figure out how to plan for the future and preserve the history of Sublette County also is important. So, um, yeah, I guess any open comments before diving into the agenda?
Thanks to you and Christy I mean, just the work you did to prepare for this is great data to have in general. It's a nice purpose. So big thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah, the agenda packet includes a PDF with the past applications since 2018 that have been presented to planning and zoning. We do not have the final decision from the county commissioners included in this yet. I think that's something we will do down the road. Unfortunately, because of timing, we just were not able to get all of that into this document. I'll bring up the agenda on my computer and we can share it. Share my screen. Okay. Okay. So I think really the purpose, I think we've gone through some of this already. Desired outcomes, just next steps moving forward. And the existing comp plan overview and the regulatory framework. Guess, does anyone want to just share your comments about the comprehensive plan? I feel there have been somewhat of a mixed review on the comments about the comp plan and how to even move forward regarding the comp plan. This because of how much effort went into it and uh, really the next steps regarding the comp plan. There is a summary in the agenda packet about what's all in the comprehensive plan and the vision. So at some point, really looking at that vision statement and deciding if this is the vision statement that the county wants to stick with or revamp this, review it again.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, on the comprehensive plan, I know there's a lot of debate, and I've debated with a lot of people on this topic about, do we need a new one? Is it good? Is it bad? I'm I might disagree with myself a week from now, but like I think that the comprehensive plan is actually in a pretty good spot, and I think that a lot of and I'll say that because there was a strategic planning initiative that Commissioners Bradley and Stevens, I think, if I'm not misremembering, Janess was like charged with kind of heading it up, and we all participated. Oh, sorry, it was Commissioner Noble. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. And it was an interesting exercise. There was like a vision and values and kind of what are the important aspects of the county. And I have to say, the thing that came out of that effort, to me, I'd be curious if you agree, Commissioner Bradley, looks a heck of a lot like the comprehensive plan. And this was last year. It really struck me that we had a lot of this, really almost, I felt like they could swap out for each other in a lot of ways. So in that regard, the goal is it representative of, Sublette County residents' visions and values for the county? And to me, that kind of says it's probably pretty close, if it's not exactly right. I think where it catches flack is that it represents a diversity of values, and people see that as conflicting. And I don't think it is necessarily conflicting or contradictory. I think when it comes down to regulations, it just requires putting it in the very specific circumstances in which a specific application is presenting things. So yes, it says things in there about being pro business, and it says things about being pro wildlife. Like those can, in certain circumstances, be contradictory and in others not. But I don't think they are on their face. So I guess, I think it just definitely requires careful thought and consideration. I don't think there's any way around that. I think if we rewrote the comprehensive plan again, we'd find ourselves in a similar place because the county really does value lots of different things. So I don't know, I'll stop there and stop rambling. But those are my comments.
Value that have 48 value back in this. Also broad. Yeah.
They're saying they can't hear. Do you want to use your microphone?
Oh, wait, it's not even. And there was a comment also to introduce yourself.
My name is Doug Vickery, and I've lived here forever. And as I step back and look, and as I started to say, I think everybody in this room has an idea what they'd like to see Sublette County be in the future. I have a rather pointed view. I'd like to see us just like we are today, but I know that's not possible. So we're going to have to go forward. But to guide that forwardness is going to take tenacity from the planning, the commission, and the public. Is what it amounts to. What do you want to see the future Sublette County look like? I want to see the future when my great grandkids come home and say, geez, Grandpa, this looks kind of like what you said it was 25, 30 years ago. But is that realistic? I don't know. I hope it could be in some regards. I don't want to get up some morning and look at and see condominiums all over Sublette County. Is that being selfish? Probably. But that's the way I feel. I don't want to see these towers all over like a bunch of forests. And I think probably the zoning folks went in the right direction to kind of alleviate that concern. When you get to the biggest issue probably in any plan is the private property rights. We all want our own private property to be unfettered by the other guy. But in reality, it should be a give and take, because anytime you speak about my private property rights, probably you're going to impede something on the other guy's private property rights. So those are the kind of things that get to be somewhat contentious, or a lot contentious. Because if I've got my spot someplace and somebody moves in and creates an issue that impacts me, is that okay for him? Or do I have to say, oh yeah, go ahead and let it happen? So that, in my mind, is going to be the crux down the road that we're going to have to figure out how to take care of. There was a mention once also of data centers, and I can tell you, they're going to pop up everywhere. And if we don't have a plan in place to address them, they will show up here at some point. It may not be of the magnitude that we're seeing in the Cheyennes or some of those countries, but I've noticed, I'm sure you folks have too, people like yourselves come out in droves to say, we don't want them. And what happens? The power to be says, yeah, we're going to have them anyway. That's not right. So I think we all need to be in tune to those kind of things that are ultimately going to come over the hill, whether we want it or not. But we're going to have the guidance that's going to say, okay, if you're going to put one of those in, here's what's going to happen, or you're not going to put it in. And is it a strong arm? Probably, but that's okay, because we have a unique part of the world here. And if we're going to keep it somewhat unique, then we're going to have to be somewhat unique in the way we dictate some of the stuff. And I hate the word dictate, but that's what it's going to come down to, is we're going to have to stand up for our own when it shows up here. I thought one time when I was growing up, I'd never be in a position like I am today. And I really, quite frankly, didn't give a damn about what was going on in the county, because I was part of it and I enjoyed it. But the older I become and I saw some of the devastation that then would occurred, I said, whoa, wait a minute, this is not the way it should be. And so as we grow older and we become more, how do I want to say this? I guess you take ownership more of your community within yourself. And so what's not good for you probably is not going to be as good for the community, or vice versa. So when we look at the comp plan, I have to agree there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I'm not certain it needs to be shook up very much. I think there's some things in it that will need to be down the road probably addressed, to the point that we have regulations that we can use to determine the direction that we want to go. You know, I'm on that, what do they say? I'm on that final ride, 10 years from now, 15, I probably won't get to see what is going to occur here in the next few years. But I hope what I do see is something that I can remember as, wow, it's still Sublette County. And so I think we all have that responsibility, or should have that responsibility, as we go forward, to know that growth is inevitable, but let's guide it in the direction that it should go, just not helter-skelter. I look at some of the things that that's in the regs now, and I agree with a lot of it. I think we're going to have subdivisions the closer to towns that can be, the better served it is for everything. And so those are things that are going to be, they'll come under fire, because more and more outlying properties, if you would, are going to be up for a subdivision. That's all there is to it. And so how do you say no to one and yes to the other? We'll just have to figure it out, because the yeses need to be closer and the no's need to be not out further, in my opinion. So I've seen it both happen. Some's not so good, some's okay. So I'm going to quit jabbering here for a minute and let somebody else. But Sublette County has been my bread and butter, quite frankly. I've raised my children here. My livelihood is here. My boss, my wife, is here. Everything I've got is because of the way Sublette County has treated me. And so I'm going to be as tough on some of this stuff as I can be, because I think you have to be in order to keep what we have in some regards. And so as we go forward, you're going to, with that SOB, do you hear what he said? And I'll mean what I say too, by the way. I don't say very often things that should not be said, but occasionally I can kind of get out of control. So know this, that I'm all about Sublette County, and I'm all about preserving all of it that we can for the future generations. Wildlife is a very important thing in our life, and if you don't like wildlife, you should just pack your bag and leave, because we've got it here and we need to take care of it and appreciate it. The revenues that we get, we know where most of that comes from. And I've seen the improvements over time. When I was 16 years old and worked on a drilling rig, you can't imagine what was going on in the oil patch then. And today, there's no comparison. The way they've cleaned things up. And you're going to have folks say, oh, we don't want them here, we don't want them there. But I'll tell you what, the way they operate today, they can come in my backyard if they want, because I know they're going to take care of it. And so as we go forward, we're going to make changes. We're going to make some mistakes, and that's human nature. So there you go. That's me. I'll turn it over to Lynn now. He's probably tired of hearing me talk anyway. Thank you.
Thing I do want to mention too is it is by state statute that the counties have the authority to have a comprehensive plan. And it is also our responsibility to be reviewing this and to keep it up to date. So even though it may be in a good place and people may agree that there's a lot to this, that it's good, it's great, we still need to somehow bring this to today's. We somehow need to do a review of this and bring it, I think it needs to have a current date. So whether or not that's a smaller review or an amendment with a new chapter at the end, or just, hey, a small statement that it was reviewed and accepted. Somehow it would be wise to review it.
Can I, on that point, I think that's a really good point. And I think it's typically when it's discussed, it's like this all or nothing thing. And I think we had someone you invited, I can't remember where they were from the State Planners Association or whatever. And they talked quite a bit about, amending it as opposed to,
Yes.
necessarily going through the whole thing, which that seems much more reasonable and like a smart move. So thanks for bringing that up.
I think there's multiple strategies to doing this, and it doesn't mean we have to rewrite the entire document. And looking at this more of trying to bring it up to today's standards somehow.
But with that thought, it needs to be brought up by locals, I think. Right, for
Perhaps, yeah.
dating our
Okay.
comprehensive plan.
So that's great.
So who does that fall on to start that process? Is that under planning and zoning technically, or is that under the commissioners and they have a committee? I guess it's been so forever since anybody did it, like what does that? Because obviously, like, the regulations obviously falls on us, but where does it in lie on who should organize?
The state statutes call out the P and Z specifically, or well, it said if a Board of County Commissioners doesn't have to put a P and Z commission in place, but if they do, then the comprehensive plan and regulations fall under planning and zoning commission. Obviously, we would want the mandate from the Board of County Commissioners, but that's where it sits statutorily.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Lynn Bernard speaking. It's strongly advised that it's revisited within every 10 years because of all the changes that take place. It's not something that's a 25-year document, but it has to fall within a decade. Thank you.
Also with the planning and zoning involvement, the benefits of that is having the public hearings, public meetings that can be facilitated with planning and zoning. And keeping the county commissioners in the loop somehow. I think that's something we need to figure out, is what that communication is going to be, making sure everyone's in it and on the same page, because at the end of the day, it will be the county commissioners ultimately adopting the comprehensive plan. Okay, well, why don't we move on from that? I think another thing I think would be worthwhile, this is somewhat, some of these topics they almost all go together, but from some of the applications, and this goes back to the survey, what are some of the key topics that may really should be looked at a high priority from the applications that have come in during the last 6 years or so? And from your experience being on the commission, perhaps it has to do with regulations or the comprehensive plan of why some applications are more difficult to review than other applications. And if you have any thoughts about how to improve that. And I think that can be more, in the workshops down the road, but I think identifying some of these high priorities would be great for us to be able to include that with the scope of work. Since I have started, we have created 3 interpretive documents in our office because of some of the wording in the regulations. And those, I think some of those topics would probably, I think would be helpful to be on the list. I actually have to go back and review what those documents are now. But I'm just curious your points of view from more of the higher level applications. I know from the survey, towers was a difficult topic because those previously were seen as public facilities. And even the use of the term public facility and some of our definitions, conditional use permits, rezoning, those seem to be some of the identified difficult topics, which even a variance, I think sometimes they can seem very simple, but there aren't nearly as many variances, even like minor subdivisions. They're just some of the different topics that we see coming in. And curious your thoughts on those.
I've seen conditional use permits for a lot of gray areas that make you scratch your head and wonder.
And I think I would completely agree with Mac on that. And I think a lot of these that are difficult to review, a lot of them tie back into our zoning districts and definitions that are within our zoning districts, because there's a lot of gray area there, which I'm not saying everything should always be black and white, but to me, that stands out as the one area of our regulations that, in my opinion, could clear up a lot of the difficulty in some of these, like the CUPs. There's a lot of things that could be better defined or better written.
Just to follow up on both of those comments, I think the challenge in P&Z meetings is, eliminating some of those gray areas where we can operate as an executive hearing and not turning it into sort of a judicial hearing, which I think happens when there isn't clarity in the regulation. Emotions and feelings and whatever come into play. And it makes it difficult to apply the regulations fairly across the county.
This is Gudrid Esmenscheid. I guess I would be curious to turn it on you, Haley, since you've divulged into this. What are some things you're coming across that you kind of can broadcast and see? I mean, you have gone through this so intensely. Are there certain areas that make you that you are confusing to you that you could see like some more clarity, some further divulgement needed into to make it easier for future applications?
I think something that's really stood out to me is when it comes to conditional uses and rezones, when they're approved, or if they are approved, the conditions that go with them, how important it is that the conditions are addressed at that point. Because a lot of conditional uses or properties that were rezoned, sometimes questions will come back to us years later. And if it's not in the resolution, if it's not in the minutes, it can be very difficult to interpret how things should be interpreted today. And there are even rezones where master plans are attached with the rezones. And going back and trying to identify what that master plan was. And is there a master plan or is there not a master plan attached with the property? I think having that clarity and documentation is very important. It's almost like when we issue a building permit, we are trying to include that on the GIS. The documentation of a zone change typically is through updating the map on the GIS and a resolution. But sometimes finding that resolution or finding the minutes from these meetings, it can be challenging. But I think the importance of what is included is like even when people provide a conditional use permit, they need to understand that what they're submitting with the CUP is what they are going to stick with. There's not really flexibility after that is approved. And sometimes people will come when they come to get the building permit and they'll want something a little different. And we will have to then, explain, this is what was approved. You really cannot make a change at this point. And I think sometimes that clarity of having, it's almost like you're coming up with your site plans before the application. So having that, and I also think some things with agricultural zoning, having better information in the regulations about uses relating to like employee housing or just short-term rentals, having some of that cleared up with, there's a little bit gray area now with the short-term rentals and the guest houses, or sorry, guest ranches. Because we're seeing some properties that are agriculturally zoned and they have multiple residences on it, they are getting the short-term rentals for multiple properties. And they have the right to do that from our regulations, but we're getting a little into the gray area of a guest ranch and having some clarity on that. But I do think that the subdivisions having boundary line adjustments, there are certain applications, a boundary line adjustment. Sometimes I wonder, does that need to go to planning and zoning for a boundary line adjustment? For a minor subdivision where it's already zoned properly, does that really need to go to planning and zoning? Which most of them, though, they do require a rezone at the same time to doing their minor subdivision. It's really Upper Hoback area where they can do the minor subdivision without a zone change. And I think there are some other like things that are more technical that could be easily addressed possibly without having to have, giant workshops, but those are some of the bigger things.
On that topic, I think a couple of comments. One is it would be remiss, to not mention that I think in the draft regulations that led us up to, was it October or November 2023 that the P&Z Commission worked on, we did address a lot of the hot topics. The guest ranch is an example of one. We did a lot of work on guest ranches. And there were lots of other things. So I guess I just don't want it to get lost in the mix, all that work, which was fueled by, I'm going to say hundreds of hours, if not hundreds, then not far from it, of public comment and discussion and engagement. And so I guess it's sort of a reminder and an appeal to leverage the good work that was done for that year and a half, 2 years in the process. The other thing I'll say is I think there's a tension that between being ambiguous, and which ambiguous is never the intent. The intent is always, let's leave latitude so we can make a subjective decision in the moment based on the circumstances. The downside of that is it leaves it open as a vulnerability for exploitation by folks who may not have the county's best interests in mind, or may be acting in ways that are not in accordance with our comprehensive plan. But so I think we often like leaving latitude for that reason, but there's a real risk to it. And it's when someone comes in and exploits it that you go, boy, that wasn't very smart to leave that much latitude. But until then, it feels good because it's working. The alternative of that is being over, then you say, all right, we better really say every if, and, or button here and write it down. And then it's really overly prescriptive. It's super long. It's really detailed and complicated. So I think that is, in my opinion, striking that right balance of leaving latitude for the subjective decision-making by all the boards, but also being detailed enough. Clear is kind is the saying, right? Being detailed enough that people understand where their boundary lines are that's an extremely difficult thing, but I think we really need to focus on that balance and figure out what we as a county feel like is the right balance.
And going to your point about all the work that's gone into the regulations the past few years, there is a table in the agenda packet showing discussions with planning and zoning starting in 2018, just about other topics and just what topics have been discussed over the past few years and are some of those conversations. There's been a lot of valuable conversations that have been had to this point. So are some of these topics ones that possibly we have information that we need?
So I guess my question, when we dug all these past topics up, you must have a lot of information stored.
I don't have a ton of information with these topics, but thankfully, planning and zoning members, Commissioner Listening has a lot. And I think there are quite a few people who do have information. Unfortunately, right now, I would have to go back and listen to recordings to get this information. And even going back to get some of the public comments. We do have some letters in our office, but I feel like I would not say it is the holistic, all of the comments, at least that I have available to me. I just haven't.
Yeah, there's, I mean, I have transcripts, which I'd be happy to share of the meetings that were held around that. But I would say a lot of that manifested within the regulation revision. I mean, say that was the ultimate output, but certainly the comments are there to go back to and find for additional details and information.
And then I think the identifying key pressure points seems like from the high level right now, the conditional use permits, and really the rezoning, those are some of the big topics. But I think even if we get a project team, we can spend a little more time trying to identify some of those big topics, going through the survey and having a good list during that scope of work development phase.
I think the list in your documentation seems pretty spot on.
And I forgot too, yeah, there's this other list in the agenda. This list. Okay, I forgot about this. And I forgot, there's a lot of information in this packet. This is a list of just all the applications that were received. And we can see that there were quite a few conditional use permits. There were 33 excluding towers. And really the top application type was the boundary line adjustment and the plot amendments. And then next up was the CUPs and minor subdivisions. So, but it did seem like here's a breakdown of just some of the reoccurring themes with resort, tourism, recreation, something that agricultural versus residential, telecommunications, agency coordination, regulatory interpretations and enforcement, infrastructure, service, impact. Right on there twice. That is on there twice. I apologize. And then natural resources and agency coordination. And one topic I didn't bring up is wildlife. I know there's conversations going on at the state level right now about the antelope corridor, and wildlife seems to be a topic that comes up with nearly every application. And I think it's great that we are receiving these recommendations from Game of Private Property Rights.
It is a tough one, and I don't want to discount wildlife, but there's not a piece of ground in this county that you could tie wildlife to if you wanted to stop a project. I mean, there has to be a balance, but it can't be overweighted in my mind.
Overweighted. Okay.
Well, I have to, I don't want to say this. I don't necessarily agree with the wildlife issue from Mr. Bradley's contention, because I put up with it a lot. I see it a lot. And most people, I think, will make, if they'll leave it alone, they'll enjoy it as it's supposed to be. And I know there's some issues out there with migration routes and what have you, and that's just part of it. They've been here forever. And so as we encroach on them, then we should have to give up a little bit, I think, to save part of those migration routes. Wildlife is everything that's alive except humans, I guess, and sometimes we're pretty wild. But you know, I watch everything from foxes to coyotes. Haven't seen the wolves yet there. And but they've all got a way to go and some place to go. And you know, we have to, I believe, give them the latitude of finding their own way and not plopping down houses right in the road or fences that need to be uh, in such a condition that they can't get through them. I think we have a responsibility as the human race to take care of the wildlife in our community. And you know, I for one will do that on my own part, and I would hope most folks will, and I think they do. The bigger issues come with, in my opinion at least, with the urban sprawl that we can see if we're not careful, and that just devastates the normal functions of way animals, wildlife, if you would, move. And so therein lies the issue of where do you want to put a subdivision? Where do you want them? Where do you want roads? Where do you want most everything that is human caused that can impact wildlife movement? And yes, they have to give up some, but I don't think they have to give it all up. And I think we need to pay attention to what I consider to be the future of the wildlife in Sublette County, because if we don't, nobody else is going to. And pretty soon, the folks that come in here to see what we've got to offer, there won't be that much. And so and I know it's a tough call. I know it's not an equal way for the boundaries, but I'm telling you, wildlife is an important factor in this community. And so we need to figure out a way to take care of it to the best that we can. That's my take on it.
About most of this. I think we can move on to the moving forward and steps for moving forward. In your packets, there is a legal size document. This document. And this was shared. I have this up on my, I need to stop sharing my computer.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
That's okay.
You find moving forward.
I apologize. I'm just trying to find it so I can pull it up on this.
Must be a
Oh my. Okay.
More.
You don't have it. Do you? Here. All right, this one? Yeah. Give me the-
So this is all. You guys.
Okay. This is the high level plan that was proposed with the mineral royalty grant application. And we submitted this application assuming the high dollar values on here from even talking with other communities. Park County, and one of the main reasons they hired the consultant, they thought it was beneficial to have a consultant, was to help go through public comments. And really the drafting the regulation section wasn't that wasn't identified as the challenging part. It is the public input side and trying to engage with the public and keeping workshops focused and having a good strategy in place. The biggest piece of advice I have received from talking with other communities is having a strong strategy going into this and having a game plan, trying to stay on focus with that game plan and not where, once you start to get a lot of public input, it can really start to, now we need to look at this and now we need to look at that. So it can start taking side paths pretty quickly. And I think getting the plan in place, it's like having the pre-meeting before the meeting, we have to do the pre-planning here. So, but I think this is just a general idea that was developed. And I think that there is room for flexibility. And as far as involvement, even the comprehensive plan update, how trying to decide how involved the consultant will be with that, depending on what we end up doing. It is your comment, Commissioner Bradley, about it being more driven internally and not having the consultant do that. That is an option, where maybe that's something we do and the consultant is more helping with some of the complex policies. So I think even when we develop the scope of work, when we release the scope of work, perhaps we even provide the budget and the consultant has an idea of what the budget is up front. And then they're telling us what all they can do with that budget rather than us. I mean, at this point, everything is public. And I think a consultant could easily look up these numbers. So as some, we've all on the private side, you're trying to do your research. So I think this is all public information, but where would the consultant be able to help us the most? And having that guidance from them too, as part of the scope of work and making sure that there are so many people in this room right now. But I do think we don't want to be taking advantage of everyone's time with expecting people to be volunteering for everything. This is going to be a long-term task and trying to figure out how to move forward with the consultant. Any other thoughts to add to that incomplete sentence?
I agree. I mean, I'm guessing you're right to like the complex part is not necessarily the drafting. Although what I would say is like, what I would hope from a consultant is we're people that know the county and we don't know what we don't know. And we're not experts in a lot of things that come before us. And so I guess where I would see a lot of value in a consultant is someone who has seen lots of different things in lots of different counties, has dealt with data centers, has dealt with crypto, has dealt with migration corridors, has dealt with all the things and can say, oh, in these 3 instances, that went really wrong. They shouldn't have done it that way. These 3 instances went really well. That's a good thing to copy, sort of thing. So to just save us from making mistakes and learning the hard way as much as possible. I mean, we're going to make mistakes no matter what, but the more we can avoid, the more pain we can avoid, the better. So I would see a lot of value in that.
What are thoughts about, and the reason the phase 0 and phase 1 are highlighted blue is that's really just the phase that we're in. So that's why I highlighted blue. And what are our thoughts though about the consultant assisting with the comprehensive plan review? And is the general thought right now that, and maybe having a small group or having planning and zoning start to look at that first, at least for the time being, to start looking at that and see if it could be done with like a smaller amendment, or could we address that in tandem or like parallel to some of these other things, start sooner?
My thinking is the comprehensive plan would be a great place to start because it's something that we talk about all the time and we refer to it a lot within our regulations. And I think, in my opinion, that would be a great place to start and see where we're at with it. And then, because maybe it is that we dive into it and we're like, whoa, like we are in way over it. We need some outside input. Or maybe it is something that we feel pretty confident in that we can do a majority of the work. And then even if it's just to have a consultant just do a quick overview of it and make sure it seems like everything's tying together if we make any, whatever amendments that we make, maybe just a final overview of it. But in my opinion, I think that's where, especially after we went through that workshop with the Wild Pass, and that's what they feel pretty confident that unless we really dig in and see some big things, that for the most part, I think that we can have a big part of that.
Can I ask, are there specific things about the comp plan that you think you've addressed?
So if I may interject here, Lynn Bernard, thank you. Feeding off of your very astute statement, we don't know what we don't know. And none of us, I don't think, are fully versed in the comprehensive plan and the intricacies of how it ties together from beginning to end. And then further correlates into the planning and zoning regulations. So although yes, we can to some extent, I don't debate that, but at the same time, we're not looking at it with a professional eye and saying these are things that really should be considered at the same time because of what's occurring across the nation. Although Commissioner Vickery doesn't like the statement of being compared to other areas, it's the verbiage that's part of the document that's important and how it ties to what they are currently studying to be cognizant about in the future. So that's my thought on it.
To answer your question though, no, I honestly, but I'll be honest too, that it's been a long time since I really like.
Yeah, I'm just, I mean, because with the regs, it's pretty easy to pick a lot of stuff that like you big stuff, small stuff, like it's like you can pick at it all day long and see lots of stuff. I was just curious, like as a policy, as a vision, policies and goals document, it's just a different animal. So I don't disagree. I mean, I'd be open to it, but I think, because I'm just thinking, how do we approach that? And if we just said, let's open it up for public comment, we'll hold some workshops and then we'll figure out what the priorities are and we'll get to work on it. I think we would find ourselves like, oh, we got to rewrite this whole thing. Maybe, or maybe, I don't know. It just feels unwieldy. So I guess I'm just thinking, is there a way, if we were going to amend it, how would we hone in on like the specific parts that we wanted to amend?
It is. So it's important if I'm, no, I was just going to, I mean, a lot has been said about the comprehensive plan. I've read it for about 20 years now. So it's, as a mission statement, the spirit of the thing I think is great. But it was written 23 years ago. And so my only thought was like, I mean, we mentioned data centers, crypto, that sort of thing that wasn't even a thought back then. And so maybe there's some, and those are the, kind of hot topics, but there may be some modernization that's necessary. And then to Lynn's point, like maybe a little future sort of looking forward to the things that we don't know and having, and I think that there is some of that in there, obviously, just again, in the spirit of what we want the county to be like in the future, that can be applied to whatever we encounter in the future. But I would say we have a little better idea today than we did in 2003 about what we may be facing in the next decade or two. That would be my only, I would agree that I don't think it needs a full rewrite, but you do kind of open it up to that if, you bring in a consultant who starts digging in and is maybe trying to earn a paycheck. But I think if I don't know how you would phase that or something, like really we're just looking for an update, not a full rewrite.
That framing does give you a slice instead of the whole thing.
Yes.
Like, so.
I think too, this is very helpful because the way that I put this scope of work together originally, the goal of having the low risk technical addendums be first was to give everyone a little bit of time to give the consultants time to start familiarizing themselves with the regulations and the comp plan before starting right off the bat with the comp plan. But possibly that could be something that they could be more of a supporting role with, if we had questions for them, like they could be more of like a support piece for us instead of the ones leading it. We could be the ones leading it and they could help support us and be there to answer questions. And we're really the ones though that could be driving it instead of them being the ones driving it.
Trying to formulate my question, not working in my head. There are some things in the comprehensive plan that are inconsistent with the regs, and if we could point some of those things out as well. That's a good place. To me, I think it would be really great to have someone be able to say, well, have you thought about this? Or is this a huge concern? Because
Any federal requirements. So we do have some things in our regulations that are just, the state statutes they've been amended. There's new state statutes in place. So that's why that's considered more of like a technical amendment. And I think having the consultant help with that, there are several consultants out there that's what they do, is they are very familiar with some of these statutes and the best way to implement them.
the regs.
But I think a multi-phase approach is smart. I mean, I think we could tackle, like if we could, there's lots of low hanging fruit in the regs to clean up things. So I mean, I would be in support of a multi-phase, like I do laid it out here, like let's do the low risk, low hanging fruit stuff. Are you thinking though that then gets, you know, updated as a new set of regs and then phase, whatever the later phase is, comes in and it's another update, or how do you think about that?
That was my initial thought, was trying to just really, yes, do the technical addenda amendments first. And then it would be more individual topics at a time past that. And possibly restructure with that first phase, if there's anything that needs to be restructured, it would just be restructuring it in the regulations and not necessarily ending the actual content. But okay, so on here, I am just changing this to where the phase 3, the comprehensive plan review and necessary addendums, that would be more driven by the county, more of a county driven effort, and having the consultant as a support piece. Do people mostly agree with that?
I agree with that.
But what about your phase 2? Is it gonna be outside help or getting tied both together with the same organization? Or your comprehensive plan in my mind should, other than the low hanging fruit, should come before regulation.
The comprehensive plan, it really should come first. But
You're talking just technical.
I
You're just talking.
I think to be able to
aspect, right?
keep moving forward with the regulations, it's more of the technical pieces and maybe more of those administrative pieces and some of the development standards that aren't as necessarily like driven by like the rezone process.
Right, there's like administrative sections.
Administrative.
The enforcement section.
Yes.
Like those would be, it doesn't really matter what the comprehensive plan looks like. Those are
Yeah.
gonna be the same regardless. And would give you better ground to stand on on a day-to-day operational perspective what we have today.
I do think still, even if the county is choosing to drive forward with the comp plan while the the consultant is helping with that regulatory update, there is still going to need to be a lot of coordination between the planning and zoning and county commissioners and possible stakeholders. So that's something to keep in mind too, when it comes to a comp plan revision. Actually, let me see where this says this in here. I believe we're supposed to be getting. Okay, it's encouraged that, the government will coordinate their land use plans and planning efforts with incorporated communities and other local entities. But I do think during that comp plan review, there may need to be some additional coordination. And it could be a pretty big effort just to even do that. So, and getting the right stakeholders involved.
So, Goodred Espenscheid again. Can you restate that? Can you clarify what you mean by like your last?
I think the towns and having any outside agencies be involved with the review, and I think we'd have to develop it would be beneficial to have a stakeholders group involved in that, or figuring out who should be involved, what kind of public feedback to have. And so I do think even if it is just reviewing the comp plan and having small amendments, there's still going to be quite a few people that need to be involved. And who just may want to be involved. So that is a big undertaking. I still think for the county, but if the consultant can help support that and also be doing the technical addendums at the same time, come back and have a different idea. They may have some better strategy for the county to tackle this. And even getting some feedback from consultants on if they have a process that they would propose, but how to utilize our office. I feel like having Scott on board, this is going to help us a lot. And I think just being able to help support the project, I really think it's important also to have involvement with the project. I don't want this, the goal is not for the consultant just to be doing this work on their own. It's going to be a major joint effort. So they aren't just going to be on their own doing this. There's going to be people involved with the process throughout. And maybe even assigning me tasks or, for tasks for us to help them.
I think that gets smart. You raised the idea of like talking to different firms, I think is kind of what you were proposing, to get ideas about what they might recommend, which I think that would be smart. If we're going to write a scope of work, to talk to people, and of course, they're going to try to pitch themselves as best they can, that they really need them, but between the lines, figure it out. I think that would be really informative and helpful. Good idea. Be a good action item coming out of agreement.
Yeah. I think trying to get the feedback from consultants, how do we do that? Or is it best to put out a request for proposal and then have that as part of the request for proposal and have like a pre-meeting conference, or have that in the RFP that we're open
There's
to?
There's things called RFIs, request for information, which you can do are often done pre-RFP, which is just a request for information.
Yeah.
And often those are written, but it seems to me that you might get more out of actually just like a conversation. Like, I don't know if you put something together, or request for information, and instead of getting a 30-page report, you actually sat down with folks. Each person gets an hour, 90 minutes, whatever it is. You walk through questions and stuff. That would maybe be a bit more productive. And the whole goal of that would be investigating best practices, standards,
Yes.
best methods for
Yes.
creating this scope of order, plan and regulation.
Didn't even think of it.
Yeah. And where we put together more an executive summary of what our goals are, then they help provide just comment. I think having to help come up with the best scope of work possible. I could share it also with members of the Wyoming Planning Association. They're having their annual conference tomorrow and tonight, so I'm going to drive over to Riverton. So I could definitely ask about this. They're actually, one of the topics is RFPs. So I could ask people about how they go about putting some of this feedback.
This is Gudrun Espenscheid again, and it seemed like, you know, for the short time I've been here, some of the most informative we've got was sitting down with these little workshops that we'd have, and things would come up, you know, from other counties. You know, through their planning and zoning administrations, that provided a lot of clarity and information that we could take from them. You know, certain wisdoms that applied to our county and how we wanted to. You know, it seemed like we can do something like that again with some other county. For instance, maybe a county that maybe we do talk to somebody with a data center and how their planning and zoning deals with that. Just to hear what they have to say and then move forward accordingly and on our own.
Box Elder County.
Okay, so I'm curious, I think it would be beneficial for the next steps. I'm trying to think how to move forward with this and like developing the scope of work. If we had like a small group that maybe we could have smaller conversations, is that something we would be able to do? Like a small workshop, a steering committee just from planning and zoning and the county commissioners where we could, you know, once I talk to people tomorrow, then I could share that feedback with that group. I think getting feedback from everyone here is going to be very difficult, going back and forth between meetings, trying to keep the project moving.
Can I comment? Something there.
Please.
Just, this was something I thought about leading up to this meeting, but I like everything you're saying about, you know, putting together small committees. No, I'm not, this isn't a critique. But no, over the past 3 years, we've met with you guys, I think one other time other than tonight, and having, whether it's steering committee, like, I mean, it often felt like we had very little direct, would be very helpful.
I think you're good.
It was a compliment.
It was. So you're talking about a steering committee and then a recommendation.
Yes, I think getting a steering committee together to help figure out more of the scope of work. If that means reaching out to different consultants, doing a little bit more research, we can start a draft scope of work and then come up with a recommendation. And perhaps even share it with planning and zoning first and then go to share it with the county commissioners following that. But I think it would be very challenging to just maintain the conversations through the planning and zoning meetings and the county commissioner meetings to be productive.
Do you have like a timeline of what that would look like? Because if you don't have timelines, you really. I think that's
The next 5 to 10 years.
right there.
You can only go so far next Thursday. Isn't that the emergency grant didn't come out and there's no word on that. We don't want to get too far ahead of that, in my mind. I mean, you've got a lot of planning in mind here, which is good and but we step out RFP and try to hire somebody prior to hearing a grant, which I think the commission would support paying for whatever, but we don't want to try to reimburse that grant for it ahead of them. That's 30th of June or something.
The June 18th.
June 18th.
And
That's done by then.
Oh, yes.
oh, okay.
I
It's months
think
away.
Haley's got it on mind.
Oh,
It'll
well,
happen.
I feel like right now, I don't know if it's going to happen. I think trying to just keep things moving and we are not going to be ready. I think having the scope of work even done by June 18th. I don't think we'll be there yet. And I think we do need to be flexible, just in depending on what the outcome is of that. Timeline, we have 2 pretty large applications for planning and zoning on June 18th. So this really would not even be open for discussion with planning and zoning until the following meeting, which is July third Thursday of July. So that would be the soonest it could even be discussed with planning and zoning, get on the agenda.
Could you have a special meeting, just have the discussions?
I think if we need to, we could schedule a special meeting if it's needed, but if we could figure out a way to get,
I think you guys do quite a little trying to get in special meetings.
we have to
You guys have a
advertise,
pretty big demand on.
we have to advertise it with over 30 days.
Well, as decisions are made, that's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was referencing, just a discussion.
Right, because it does seem like after we find out about the NRG grant, we probably will want to have some sort of follow-up discussion.
That's just, I mean, we're not gonna get anywhere anytime soon. Special meeting somewhere.
Is there interest from anyone and that would be interested in being part of a small committee? And I feel like I will put the legwork into it. I think just having people that I could call if I have a question, it would be nice to just know who those people are that I should reach out to first, and possibly we could, if we need to schedule a quick meeting, it could just be a smaller group of people.
I'd be happy to, as long as you don't expect a preference.
What are you proposing in regards to the makeup of the committee? Is it going to be only planning and zoning individuals? Is it going to be general public? Is it going to be a mix of everyone? What is it going to be? Who is it going to be made of?
So this committee is gonna be one that writes up an RFP and talks to these possible.
Yes, helps develop the scope of work. Yes. And I am open to, I think it's more what your thoughts are also, as far as
Well, there's-
what kind of input.
If there's more than 3 members, so we need to be 2, at least, you know, 2 BSCC and 2 PD.
Remember to get the whole work done and go on surveys. So take this one.
The CC members.
I think too.
You would have to P and Z.
Sorry, who was the second? You didn't see it.
This.
I think all 4 of us said yes.
All 4 of you said yes.
So I'm fine
That's,
with not.
It's made things.
That's okay.
This is why you're.
I don't need to either. I can
Yeah,
assist
I
in
know, I
other
can-
ways, so
I can step
Yeah.
back because I,
you guys would be good since you've been. And I can assist in other ways. As it comes up, there'll be more.
Okay, so Chris and Holly. And then. Eric and. We'll have leftover.
Haley, I hate to break the bubble, but I think it's pretty important to have somebody from outside of these groups. In other words, somebody from the public involved in this too.
I'm sorry, Mac and Lynn.
So what would you suggest is the best way for us to determine? I'm agreeing with you, but what do you think is the best way to determine who to choose? The general public.
Well, I think you let the general public choose themselves. You have open up to we're interested in an individual from the public to sit in on this group. And you'll get several applications, and then you can just shake them up in a can point and pick out. That's kind of what you generally do at any other kind of a jury. So,
So you
I know. Well, that's what that would be. Pardon? Well, I don't know. I've been hearing talk about we don't want the group too big. And so, I don't know. I can tell you there's some public folks that'll have a lot of good input or bad input, however you want to look at it. They should be included because that's what it's about. It's about the public. It's not about this table of people.
Well,
Yeah, well, that part's fine with me, but I'm just saying we need to have the public involved in this deal because we're going to go forward. Hopefully, it's going to be a while before we're going to go through this again. And so it needs to be done as right as possible. And public involvement, there's some, pardon me, there's some pretty astute people in the public in this community. I do know that. So I don't know how you go about doing that, but I'm sure you.
sure, Haley can sort that one out. Thanks for the second, Holly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is the best place for me to deciding who should be. I would feel more,
Website or
I
something,
almost would
see what you get for a response.
feel a little more comfortable if this was more of like a higher level decision.
Well, who's higher?
Well, what about, not to disagree, but just to, because I do think that adding more people definitely makes it take longer. The other thing is, I guess, public engagement could be at multiple points. Like if this committee reported back in public meetings, if things were posted on the county, if things were posted for public comment, I mean, that would just be another way to get public engagement along the way as an alternative. Like picking two, I mean, I'm guessing we're saying 2 members of the public. I don't know, less or more, what would is a difficult task.
I agree with Chris. Also, no, it's not. It's happened a couple of times. Also, at least on this half of the table, we are the public and not elected, and engaging with the public, and especially, I mean, going through these regulations the last 3 years for me, but people know who we are and reach out. We get emails, phone calls, people stop us in the store to talk about these issues. So I don't think it's a bad idea, but to your point, it does make those meetings run a lot longer. And I think that, I don't know, you would be able to include the public through the forums that we have in the past and get that input if they know what's going on. So just my thought also.
Public here right now that seem interested in what's going on, what's going on, and
Anybody want to join that?
I say, make them do the survey.
but I think too, right now, what we're working on is coming up with the scope of work. This isn't coming up with policy. It's something coming up, but I just want to take any public comment because.
Yes.
So Carmel Kale. As far as developing, I can go back to my voice.
As far as developing the scope of work, it does seem like maybe engineering companies with whom you have friends and neighbors, or people who were county planners and are members of the American Planning Association, or that sort of thing, are going to have a pretty easy look at saying, well, you should do this and you should do that, or your contacts may be in Cody. Your Park County. I mean, I'm just thinking, I think there are public who are very much interested in this, but probably not so much the scope of work.
And Carmel, you're fully aware that if not offered to the public, we're going to hear it, the public's not included. So it's a question that needs to be asked and addressed. And
Up on the website, people can send their emails.
Bettina Sparrow. I hope whatever you put out is a little clearer than what I'm leaving this room with, because I'm fairly confused right now. And if you're going in the direction I think you're going, I don't agree with it, so I would not volunteer. I don't think you ought to be doing the comprehensive plan and regulations review at the same time, because one flows from the other. So that's just, and maybe I would add one more comment. If this is the level of public participation that you got from your advertising, then your advertising isn't very good. I don't know what else to say. I think there's a lot more interest in what's happening here than this that we represent. So I don't know what the answer is, but sorry, kind of a downer. Debbie Downer here.
My name is Jocelyn Moore, and first of all, excellent job, Haley. Little baby on, okay. And I think 100 years ago in 1926, what did our predecessors, what were they looking at? They probably, some were still moving things with horses and horse-drawn wagons. And where are we going to be? This was before you were born, Commissioner, I'm sure. But where are we going to be in 100 years? I think this idea of let's look 10 years out is really short-sighted. And we should think, what do we want Sublette County to look like in 21, 26? The zoning stipulations, I'm going to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan and then some about the zoning stips as well. The zoning stipulations are only suggestions if there's no follow-up. And I would like for the commissioners to consider at some point for hiring an enforcement officer. For example, there were a lot of zoning steps when Sanddraw was first approved, and none of those have been followed up with. And I would say too, don't have two sets of regulations. Don't have one that is for the family and friends of the powerful in the county, and then another one that the average person has to follow. Back up your zoning administrator, especially on these CUPs, when they catch you and they're like, well, can't we just modify this a little bit? Your answer is no. Nope. And I want to say that we should consider every zoning application not as a final solution, but as as a door opening. Because I think about the big brouhaha with the 40-rod subdivision that came in, and then I drove by there today going up to Jackson, and because it was presented as being a comprehensive development that would be done by one builder. And so I went by there today, and you can see where all the lots are for sale individually. And as far as the topic of wildlife, that comes under due diligence. When I buy a piece of property, it's my responsibility to see if there's a well. It's my responsibility to see if there's access. It's my responsibility to see what the soil is. And it's my responsibility to see what wildlife traverses that area and what I'm required to do. I mean, we have regulations in this county as far as fencing goes. And so the whole thing about, well, oh gosh, I bought it and now you're going to make me do this for the wildlife. If you can afford a piece of property for $500,000, I mean, the average sale price of a home now is approaching that. If you can afford that, by golly, you can afford someone to do the due diligence on you. So I totally reject that, or woe is me. A consultant is like having a trail guide. If you're going to go up into the winds, do you want to have a rented horse and a guidebook in your pocket? Or do you want to have someone who's been there before, who knows where the problems are, who knows how the trail has changed, and they're going to lead you in the right way? So I think the idea of a consultant is just really brilliant. And I think one of the ways to do it is to take this long list of problems that you've identified and say, Does our comprehensive plan help us be overpowered by other people who are more prepared than we are? So all the planning and zoning folks to take your time to come out. I really am very grateful that you'll put this much effort into taking care of Sublette.
Are there any hands raised online? Thank you.
Oh, Joy. Because Joy has her hand raised. It popped up at the bottom for just a minute. A minute.
Right, unmute yourself, wait.
Probably text her. Think about living in a small town.
Tested this. Bring them all in.
Amy, your following, put her on speaker.
You want me to do that?
She says, no, I'm not saying anything. She said, never mind.
Put my hand removable with.
Yeah. What's called it?
Oops.
One thing I just would like to point out is we really are trying to get the word out about these meetings. And I think it is challenging though, how things are published in the newspaper about meetings. We have a Sublette County Facebook page, but it's really not that highly viewed. And we actually posted this meeting earlier today, but I don't know. I think things just aren't that highly viewed, or, I mean, even the fee changes that was on Facebook and there wasn't one comment on it. So I think even having the current events page on planning and zoning, we really are trying to get the word out there, but I think it's taking a little bit of time, and I know it takes effort. Right, also. So if there are ideas too, to help us with outreach, and I think with this meeting, trying to get public input, I think we're open to that too. Because some of these things, a lot of people don't know until after the meeting.
On the reels, TikTok dances or something.
Yes.
Okay.
So at the beginning of this, you said you wanted a work plan by the end of it. I don't think
I
we've got a
know.
work plan, but I guess, I mean, to Chase's earlier point and to your kind of hopes for a work plan, I wonder, like, from the Board of County Commissioners, like, what do you all want as next steps here? What do you think is an important, where should the sites be set in this endeavor?
Well, myself, I want to see the comprehensive plan. That seems to be the number one topic of everybody. So I think this group will go forward to get some help on comprehensive.
So have you guys went through the NEPA process? You have? So the NEPA process lays out a very good roadmap. I'm involved currently with the BT Bridger Teton Cooperating Agency, where we're revising that plan. Was intimately involved with the Rock Springs RMP revising that plan. So I'd strongly suggest that we find a NEPA expert on how that plan revision comes through. And I know Mac's giving me the side eye right now because I'm bringing an environmental policy into it, but it could be just as much important on this plan as it is in any other plan that goes through the NEPA process. And they have a very good roadmap, even though the Bush administration pulled it out of the CEQ's hands. CEQ had some very good regulations on how that works. At the end of the day, I think a lot of it could pertain to this plan and should be at least explored.
What's some other feedback about reviewing the comp plan first and not in tandem with regulations?
I think you're spot on that as far as, sorry, Dave.
Oh, you're good.
I think once you get a plan, so a plan is the guiding document that helps whoever, when you think about what a commission is, and you have a map in here of what Sublette County is, and you take that white area that's in there, and the people that own that white area should have a direct voice in what happens on that land, and that's how they do it through the Board of County Commissioners. I also think that, we as Sublette County should be very careful on trying to push that power off or give that responsibility up to a federal agency, state agency, or any other agency that isn't subject to having to stand in front of the people that put them in this before they can make those decisions.
So I think everybody here knows we lost a year, but not doing the comprehensive plan first, and then we were told after the year, we should have done that first. So I think a lot of the comprehensive plan could be reworded. Maybe basically it's like it should be, but I think some things, people interpret it different. So I think we need to work on that part and agree on how it's worded. Because the last 2 years, a lot of people out here in the audience knows the comprehensive plan better than a bunch of us. It's because they've studied it. They interpret it different. So I think it's important to get this out of the way, and then I think the other all come in place.
Did you put in a grant for a consultant? I mean, I don't know where we stand in terms of hiring a consultant. And when will you get word about that?
We will hear about that on June 18th.
Okay, I thought
Yes.
that's what you said. Okay, because it seems like there's a navigation problem here in a very complicated landscape. And I think even navigating through the comprehensive plan with somebody who's been on the trail before is probably a good idea. I think a consultant would be beneficial because I mean, when you think about all the parts that have to come together, as you well know, it's very complicated. And I think having a consultant on sooner as opposed to later is a good idea.
And I think that is another thought that may need to come up following this June 18th meeting. It's very possible that the MRG grant will not provide funding, the full funding. And I think it's most likely the county will not receive full funding based off of the applications they've received. They've reached out to us a couple times now asking what we would be willing to negotiate down to. And we have responded that we provided you the application and what our request is. But I do have a feeling that there may be, it probably will not be the full amount. Hopefully they provide some support, but should they not support us with the funding, what is that next step? And I know we can tackle that when it comes, but I think still trying to keep moving forward. The goal of this is to just keep the conversations moving so that when we hear about the grant, we at least have a good scope of work in place. And we're still proceeding, trying to make progress on something. And we have been looking for other grant sources as well. Fortunately, there's just the way that this comp plan, it's so high level that most grants are rather specific. So this has been, I've made several phone calls about grant applications, and I'll keep looking. But right now, this is the main one, and I think that economic development plan, that's something, that's another opportunity, but not necessarily bring us with this scope of work.
I'd like to make one more comment, and it's almost 8 o'clock somewhere. No, so I've supported the concept of a consultant from the get-go, but the one caveat is just not any consultant, because we've been through that once before. And the outcome wasn't very good. And so I think it's very important that we pick, or able to pick, the one that's going to fit the box that we're in, so to speak. And sometimes we look at cheap when we shouldn't, because sometimes that's what you get. And so I think, from my perspective at least, I think Haley needs, and I'm sure she will, needs to look at what the most overall consultant, the one that will do the best job in her mind for our community. And we look at that individual first, and then we look at the dollars behind it and make that call. But right now, I think if we're going to make something happen that's going to stand the test of time, then I don't see a few dollars standing in our way. That's my perspective. So anyway, that's my take on the consultant.
I will have to look into an RFI process and our procurement policy to see how that all works and reaching out to people. I haven't done anything quite like this before. So I've been involved in a lot of RFPs in the past, and this one I'm just trying to figure out exactly how to get around this. So, but, oh, I didn't. Okay. But okay, I think though moving forward, there's beneficial direction here with having the 4 individuals to be part of this committee and helping come up with the next steps. And perhaps we can share, once we hear about the grant, we'll take this back to planning and zoning. We can discuss the scope of work. We may need to have a conversation at groups right after we hear about the MRG grant. And we can do a little bit of research. I'll talk to members at YOPAS about some of their strategies, but it seems like general consensus is also starting with the comp plan before going into regulations. And I personally am 100% supportive of this, and the original proposal was written this way to kind of keep that momentum going with the regulation drafting. So I am very supportive of looking at the comprehensive plan, having other people to help us. Well, it will be beneficial. So, any other thoughts for that plan? Am I missing something? This is.
I would like to thank the county commissioners for coming and meeting with us today, because I feel way better about where we're at now. Like, I know maybe it doesn't seem at face that we made a ton of progress, but in my mind, we did. Like, I think at least we have a plan now, and we have a direction to move forward. So I really appreciate you guys taking your time to come here and meet with us today. Because to me, I feel like this was really beneficial.
I apologize. One thing I do want to mention, was there interest in having anyone from the public being part of this group with the scope of work?
Are you asking public?
I'm asking you, yeah. And I know there was the comment about getting the engineers' input. I personally am a little hesitant also to reach out directly to consultants that may be proposing the project. I actually did talk to Mike Jackson and asked if he would possibly be interested in helping, and he was like, down the road, if there's something you guys want help with. So we wanted to talk to Mike and see if he was interested, if Rio Verde wanted to, but I do have a little bit of hesitation of getting like planning consultants involved in the, because that may disqualify them with the actual project if we get them too involved.
Good point.
I don't know, I almost feel like if, just in regards to just getting scope of work, just the plan, I think we can keep that pretty minimal. Because then it's whenever we move forward to actually, like, cause all that committee is doing is just getting us a plan. Right. So then when it's the actual like decision making and starting to get into policy and starting to reviewing plans, and that's when we really need. But I think if we can keep it small, just so we can get a plan of work. That's, I think that.
Would there be, what would people think too if I had reached out to the Wyoming Planners Association? Is open from that group, the whole review. Just someone from like an outside community. Oh, thank you.
Haley, do you want us to post the board? I do have it on my calendar.
I guess speaking of this board meeting, that is 18th, there is a planning and zoning meeting that day, and I do not know what the time of the meeting will be. I think it would be beneficial if someone attended. If it was earlier in the day, possibly, you know, a planning and zoning member could attend, but I think just the drive, it's difficult. Is anyone going to this?
At the agri planning and zoning meeting.
Sorry,
Cheyenne. You need to go to one, Mac. I've been to a couple. You have? That's right. They're fun. Mac going.
like more of the MRG discussions. Because
No.
I didn't know if now they really want people there or not as much.
Used to, they wanted to see a face there.
Yeah. Lead takers. Scott.
Yeah.
There. He's there already. Like.
I can go, but then I can do it, planning and zoning meeting. Doesn't matter to me.
Well,
Maybe we have a little time.
Maybe the planning and zoning board should all go there and we can have our meeting from him.
I like that. That would be fun.
Like that.
we would just,
Good team building.
that's what I'm saying.
Team.
Team bonding. Team bonding experience. Well, I think it would be great if someone could go, and I could also reach out to the state and ask if how important it is, but if people are willing to call anyone about this, I think that would help too, just to you need get all the positive encouragement for the project, at the state level, so.
And I would think, with you.
Make that an option. But like,
Yeah.
I'd like to make one more comment. Oh, it's 8:15 now. No. The advertisement issue is just an issue. That's all there is to it. The commissioners meet twice a month, every month. And very rarely do we see anybody come to these meetings unless there's a hot button issue of some kind, and then there'll be several show up. So people have a tendency to be blasé, if you would, until after the fact. And I say, oh my goodness, they didn't let me know about it. Well, yes, we did. You just didn't pay attention. So I don't know how you get past that, quite frankly, because we've sat in here meeting after meeting, and sometimes Lynn and I are the only ones that are shooting barbs at one another because there's nobody else left. And I just don't know how you get by that thing. Is that not correct? That is correct. Say yes. Yes, you would. And so I don't know how you get by that. I mean, you can put signs out, you can put radio ads out, you can put paper ads out. You're going to get just a handful of folks sometimes that have a definite interest, just like tonight. We have people here who are interested. They took time to find out to come here and sit and listen, and they'll walk out of here with their own opinions. And that's just the way it is.
Sorry, are you done? I want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I-
Yeah, I'll
I
turn
just-
mine off.
But it's,
That we sent was done, that we sent was done. So why even bother anymore?
and I hear that too. I gave my input and the county doesn't care. I mean, I think that's genuinely, we've done a real disservice. We have essentially, our actions have showed people this does. We care a lot about the public's input, but our actions have not demonstrated that. I think that's the core of the issue. It's hard at any level, but we are making it harder to get people to these meetings.
Until June. I don't think it would be until June. Send out an email and see people's availability. I'm going to be out of town a little bit, so figure out, maybe do a doodle. I want to get some prep work done first too. So. For the scope of work, We will get input. I'll see if anyone from WyoPass would be willing to have conversation with us, or at least I could talk to them and get some input of WyoPass tomorrow. And then during the actual project, once we start with the consultant, I think at that point we public involvement. I think so. Found.
She said now, okay.
All right. Any other comments before we close it out?
Thanks for pulling us together.
Everyone.